So back in March, I thought it would be funny to create a social media post for April Fool's Day that included a jet with a unique paint job on it. And I didn't want to just throw a color on it and call it good. I wanted to think of a company that already does killer marketing and wild marketing, and people would look at it and say, yeah, they would do that for sure. And the answer was right in my hand: Liquid Death. But it gets interesting, because little did I know that they were already working on something where they're giving away a jet. Like literally giving away a jet. I don't know if you've seen it, but
this summer, Liquid Death is giving away an actual jet. And anyone who's 18 or older like me can win it. Yeah, it's 100% a real jet.
It's kind of like the Pepsi Where's My Jet thing, but they're actually doing it. They say it's 100% true. So you can expect me to be buying quite a few of these bad boys. So today I wanted to show you how I use Photoshop to create the Liquid Death jet. And if you're at all familiar with Photoshop, it's surprisingly easy. This is a technique that I picked up while I was designing wraps for race cars. And actually that hood on the wall right there is from a race car that I designed for Subaru. The main point of this is to make sure it looks realistic with shadows and gradients so you can get an idea of what a car would actually look like with the wrap on it. Or in this case, to fool people. So, let's dive right in. Sorry to interrupt, but guess what? I'm giving away this watch. If you want to find out how you can win it, there's a link in the description below. The first thing you want to do is find a photo with good contrast and one that's sharp. If you want to follow along while we're working through this, I'll leave a link in the description below to download a high-res photo. Now the first thing that we want to do is select the jet. I like to start with the object selection tool, which does a fairly good job. This is where the high contrast comes into play. But you'll see here that it doesn't quite get everything. So we're going to have to refine it a bit. There are a few ways that you can do this, but I like to use the polygonal lasso tool because there are a lot of straight lines on the jet and I feel like it's a lot quicker than some of the other ways. Since we already have the selection, you have to hold down the shift button when you start the new selection. Now with this, I don't try to be too accurate because we'll refine it more in the next step. I want to make sure I get the general shape but not be too liberal with it. One thing you'll notice is that in the shadows, it's pretty hard to see the edge of the jet. This is where I'll be a little bit more cautious and select a lot more than I'll actually need. I've always found that the areas around the jammer pods and the external fuel tanks are a little bit harder to see and select. Once it's all selected, we can copy paste it into a new layer. And now we can start to refine it a lot more. And there's a couple things that I do to make it a little bit better and easier to see and make sure that we can see what's what. The first thing I do is create a color fill layer so I can see the pieces that I want to erase. To help with this, I do a color that's bright so I can see the edges a lot better. Since it's hard to see where the jet begins and ends in the shadows, I'll add a brightness and contrast adjustment layer and bring the brightness way up. Now we can see into the shadows a lot better. To get rid of the pieces we don't want, we're going to use the eraser tool. I like to set the hardness of it at 90% so it's not fully hard, but still hard enough to make the edges sharp. So now we'll just go around all the edges of the jet to get rid of everything that we don't want. And in this case, it's all the dark edges around the jet. And now that we have the jet completely isolated, let's duplicate it a couple of times. We'll use these other layers in a couple of minutes and you'll see why. We also want to duplicate the background layer just in case we need to pull any pieces from it. I just have it as kind of a safeguard if there's anything that we need or that we miss while we're cutting things out. Then command and click the jet layer to select the shape of the jet. You want to make sure that the second background layer is selected in the layer panel. We're going to get rid of the jet on this layer with content aware fill. You'll notice that once that's done, it leaves a pretty gnarly ghost around the edges. So we're going to get rid of that next, and it's really easy. To do that, we're going to use Generative Fill. Now before we had that, you would have to go around with the heel tool and do it one by one all along the edge, and it was very tedious and time consuming, and it just took a lot of time and kind of annoying. It was just annoying. But thankfully we have this really quick tool that can do it really well. Now you can see that it's almost like it was never there. It gives you a few different options to pick from, so just choose the one that looks the best to you. Now comes the most fun part where we're actually changing the color of the jet. But before that, we need to create a group that will control all the colors for the jet only. Once the group is created, command click the jet layer again and create a mask. Now anything that we put in that group will only affect the jet. From here, let's make a rectangle, and I'm going to change the color of it to dark gray. Now I know what you're thinking, this is just a gray silhouette of a jet. And you would be right. So to help with that, we're going to change the blend mode of one of the other jet layers to multiply. And basically what this does is it gets rid of all the light areas of the image and it keeps all the shadows and dark lines and everything like that. So it gives you that detail but you can see through, which is why you can now see the shadows and the dark details on the jet. It's starting to look a lot better, right? Except I'm sure there are a couple of issues, one or two issues that you probably noticed. First, the cockpit doesn't look quite right. And second are all the parts that they wouldn't normally paint, like the jet nozzles. So we're going to break out the eraser tool again on one of the jet layers that we created earlier. I'm going to start with the cockpit, and all we're doing here is erasing the areas where you can see inside the cockpit while leaving the hoops over the top and the portions where you can see through the glass to the outside. And once that's done, we're going to move back to the jet nozzles and do the same thing. It's honestly pretty easy. Since we erased those parts, the mask on the group that we created earlier isn't correct. So we're just going to create a new one with the new jet layer. You want to make sure that one of the jet layers with the unpainted parts with the cockpit and the jet nozzles is under that group. That way they show through the gaps that we just created. And now we can simply drag the gray rectangle into that new group. And now that we have that all done, we can start adding the logos. Drag the first logo into the group and resize it to fit where you want to put it. And then I'll change the color of the logo by double clicking on the layer and selecting color overlay. I'm going to make this one white. Now that it's the right color, duplicate that layer and resize both of them at the same time using the transform tool. You can do that by hitting Command T. Get them to the rough size that you want and hit enter. Then select them one at a time and reposition it to where you want it to be. And to make it even cooler, we're going to use the skull icon. And because I couldn't find the skull on its own, I'm going to grab it from this image right here. This is a really easy part. So you're going to want to go into the select menu up top, click color range, then with the eyedropper tool, select the white and hit enter. And now I'm going to copy and paste it into a new layer and hide the original one. Then I'm going to use the lasso tool and just select the skull and not any of the words. Then I'm going to copy it from this document and paste it into the new jet group layer, and then resize and reposition it to fit where I want it. And as you can see by this can, the liquid death writing is in white and the skull is gold. So let's keep it on brand and make the skull gold. Again, we'll do this by double clicking on the layer and selecting color overlay. Then you can duplicate the skull and position it in the same place on the other wing. Now this is looking pretty sweet. There's still a few tweaks that I want to make it look even better and even more realistic. The first thing I want to do is add something to the tail because it feels like a gray blob right now. So I'm going to duplicate the skulls and find a good way to put them there. I kind of thought oversized would look good, but I'm really not digging it. So I'm gonna make them a lot smaller. And you can make them whatever color you want. I'm gonna go with white because I think that's what looks best right here, but you can make it whatever color you want. Gold, blue, pink, anything. I also wanna play with the color of the jet a bit. I think it's a little bit dark right now, so I wanna find something that looks a little bit more realistic. Something kind of like this. I'm liking that. Okay, I'm happy with that. And there we go. That's about it. And now that we have all this work done, you can really change the color to anything you want. You can make it blue, you can make it pink, you can make it green, anything you want. You can even put different designs on there, like an American flag jet, a Dogecoin jet, a Trump jet. You're only really limited by your creativity, so get creative. And that's all I got for you today. Let me know what you think of this one. I know it's a little bit different than what I normally do, but if you enjoyed it, I'll make more like this where I show you how I edit photos. And as always, keep your eye on the sky and your mind skeptical. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.